Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. We've got a ton of things to get into, some interesting stuff happening around the NBA. We got a big extension for Paolo Banchero. We'll talk about that. We've got Bradley Beal news. Where's he ultimately going to wind up? Rumors with the Anthony Melton, Jonas Valanciunas, all kinds of stuff, plus some interesting things happening contractually around the league, too, for us to get into. Make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications as well. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Keith Smith. Keith, what's the buzz like in Orlando now that Paolo Banchero has gotten his extension done? Which, we talked about it yesterday on the show, and no more than 5 minutes after we stopped recording, boom, Paolo Banchero gets his extension because, of course,
it was just enough time that I unplugged and packed up the microphone and put it away and restarted updating cap sheets. So
never fails.
Yeah, I mean, people are fired up for the Magic. They loved this team over the last couple of years as they've kind of grown up and made a couple playoff appearances. People were really excited about Desmond Bane. Yes, that happened. I know it feels like it was, a year ago that trade went down, but they do have Desmond Bane, and now people were assuming Paul will get taken care of. If you get into a little bit deeper conversations, people are recognizing, isn't this team going to be really, really expensive? And they will be, but it's what you do, right? When you're trying to lock up your own guys, you take care of them as best you can. And here's the good news. None of those contracts are bad contracts. So if they need to get out of one of them later, they'll be able to get out of it. But notable in the Banchero extension, you got a player option on the end of it. So that is kind of interesting there. We'll get that fixed on Spot Track. That should be a PO on year 5 there instead of just the extra UFA
just
year.
Flat, yeah.
We're just in the middle of 9 bajillion updates. And also
there's nothing going on right now. Keith, what are you talking about?
I mean, we're also only few weeks away from the Major League Baseball trade deadline, which has half the team consumed, as well as NFL teams are making minor roster moves as training camps get ready to open in a couple more weeks. So just 100 billion things, and soccer transfers are going on all over the world, and hockey stuff is happening. So yeah, it's a busy time for our small but mighty team. But yeah, got a player option. Extremely rare. We don't see player options on rookie scale extensions. Jason Tatum and Donovan Mitchell were the last 2 guys to get them. So, that kind of tells you where the Magic see Paolo Banchero.
Yeah, he's obviously the 1A guy, or they believe he's going to be that for this team. I thought he got off to a great start last year and then had that unfortunate and kind of bizarre oblique injury, the same one that then Franz Wagner had. I don't know what's going on in Orlando. Maybe it's a side effect of riding the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train a few too many times or something like that. I don't know. But
it's because we're hitting the weights too hard. That's what it is, right? We're out there, it's sun's out, guns out, baby.
There it is. There it is. That's it. You're loving that weather in Florida. So look, if they can stay healthy, that's going to be a big, big thing for the Magic. I think this deal will be looking just fine as long as Paolo Banchero can stay healthy and if he can get back on track. So many players on the Magic just couldn't shoot at all last year. A number of guys that shot well below their career percentages. Some of that I attribute to the lack of creation ability that was on the roster. Now you've got Des Bane. You bring in Tyus Jones as a backup point guard as well. I think that will help mitigate those abilities, in addition to the fact that Bane and Tyus Jones both shoot the ball well. So that's going to help the overall percentages too. But Paolo, obviously he's been a great find for them. I will always think of their incredible draft day swerve when they got Paolo Banchero at the number 1 pick. That was an all-time great bit of deception there by the Orlando Magic. Keith, my only concern is when I start looking ahead for Orlando. And I love that they're going for it. The East is open. I love they're going for it. But I start looking ahead and I start going, Franz.
Yeah.
Des Bane at $42 million in a couple of years. Jalen Suggs. Now you add Paolo. Like, these numbers are starting to add up. And what we're starting to see is teams, they get this kind of run a couple of years above that second apron, and then they have to start making some tough decisions. Is that how you foresee things playing out? Like, is this a limited window run? Because once the numbers start adding up, the Magic are going to have to make some tough choices in a few years.
Yeah, I mean, and this was why it was so key for them to get Jalen Suggs on the front-loaded contract.
Yeah.
It's not a massive amount, but as the rest of these kick in, his number comes down a little bit. That'll help some. The cap will go up. It's not no longer going to be 10% raises per year. It's going to be 7%, probably followed by a bunch of years at 5% on the out years. But that's going to be big. All those little things will add up. But then you look at like Jonathan Isaac. He's got some guarantee triggers around games played in his contract. Wendell Carter Jr.'s deal actually extends not this season, but next season and jumps up by $8 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty good size jump. But then after that, they're kind of out of other deals on the books. So we'll see what that looks like, and they'll kind of rebalance if they need to. I think if they really ran into a spot where we just can't carry these three big contracts, they'll just move one, because I think those will be very movable. They're all good players, and the value is not, out of bounds for where they are as players either. So we'll see. One thing to note for this current season for Orlando, they are currently just below their first apron hard cap line. So they're probably very likely to go into the regular season carrying only 14 players, barring some other kind of move. We're going to talk about a couple other situations like that in the league, including with your Los Angeles Lakers.
Correct.
Here in a little bit. But there is that's just something worth noting. And there was a pretty lively for like a post-midnight Twitter back and forth that I got into. And I don't mean that in any bad way. Everybody was very nice and respectful. Mm-hmm. It was just, you're not really looking to have in-depth cap conversations at midnight, but I appreciated it. Kept me going. Just about like, wait, why their cap numbers are only bing, 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 bing. And it's because Desmond Bane has incentives in his deal, which that pulls the Magic up. Those count towards the apron, and that pulls them up too close to the first apron. So just important to note, unlikely incentives, not in the cap number, but they do count towards the aprons, because that closes that loophole of, hey, use it all up, and then these guys trigger these incentives, and then you're over the first apron hard cap later.
Right.
That's why they count in ahead of time like that.
Just assuming that you're going to hit those incentives. Yep. And then if you don't, you don't. Right. That makes sense. Okay. Kind of similar to when we talk about cap holds too, kind of a similar idea. Like, a long time ago, the Spurs with Kawhi Leonard, they would let their guys hit free agency, then go spend all their cap space, and then use bird rights to go over the cap and sign their guys to big new deals. And then they're way over the cap. Well, cap holds were installed in order to try to eliminate that ability, because that cap hold eats up a chunk of your space. So the same idea. They're just anticipating that you could wind up using that money.
And where that, like the Kawhi situation, Tyrese Maxey last summer, those guys were drafted late-ish, like they weren't top 5 picks, so they weren't carrying these massive cap holds. So they were able to take advantage of their small cap hold, and that's how you can kind of beat the system in a way. It's not really a loophole. It works like it is. But you're absolutely right. The cap holds are weird. Like today, it was just kind of funny. And yesterday, the Bucks and Nets, two teams that are using cap space, went through and renounced all their old free agents that they had on the books. So for like the Nets, when I shared it today, people were like, wait, why was LaMarcus Aldridge and Wilson Chandler? Like, why are they still on the books? Cap holds stay on the books until one of 3 things happen. Player resigns with the team, player signs with another NBA team, or the player is renounced by the team, which basically just means renounced is a fancy word for cleared and gave away. And that means you get rid of the free agent rights. But that's why, and teams don't bother renouncing until they have to, because there's really no reason to do it until you need to.
Look at the Lakers list.
Yeah, the Lakers list is pretty funny.
You've got the Lakers have Dwight Howard. The Lakers have Jared Dudley. Those guys are both 40. Carmelo Anthony.
My guy, AB.
Avery Bradley. Yep. Wayne Ellington. All these guys still on the Lakers books there with cap hold. But it doesn't matter. If you stay over the cap, it doesn't matter so much.
Yeah.
It's just if they were to drop below the cap, suddenly all these guys will get renounced. And you'd be like, what do you mean the Lakers are renouncing Dwight Howard? What? How is this plus? It's just Teams don't
Dion
do it until
Waiters
they have
too. I
to.
don't think you mentioned him at the top of
Dion
the list
Waiters, that's
there.
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
and it does result in like funny things because like you're like, oh, I forget. Like I like to tweet them out simply because I enjoy the
The
reactions of people like,
reaction.
I forgot that guy was on that team
Right.
at the end of his career and those kind of things. And it's just kind of like a little bit of a fun trip down memory lane. Since we're having a little bit of fun here with these, go ahead and pull the Warriors up because they've got quite the list as well with some names you're gonna be like, whoa. It's just fun. While you're pulling that up, cap holds are they count towards the cap. They have nothing to do with the player does not get paid that money or anything like that. Yeah, you had to
David
resize
West.
the page. Yeah.
David West is 45 years old. Matt Barnes is on the Warriors here.
Jonas Jerebko?
Jonas Jerebko. Yeah.
Jonas, I think it's actually a hard J on that one.
Is it Jonas?
Yeah,
Jonas?
I think it is.
Jonas?
Then you've got what do we got? We got
Andrew Bogut.
Yeah, Andrew Bogut still floating around. Andre Iguodala.
Yeah.
Working in a high profile lead role with the Union now, I believe. JaMychal Green. So yeah, it's kind of fun to look at these a little bit. I will admit it's kind of annoying that then they just sit there in perpetuity unless something happens. But yeah, it's kind of fun to see these when they pop up.
All right, let's jump over to this topic. No incentives on new deals. Keith, I was talking about this a little bit last night on Lakers Nation that you look around the NBA, you've got a lot of deals that are now being created that have non-guaranteed years towards the end of them. A lot less player-friendly deals that we're starting to see. And I think part of that is the influence of a very, very cap restricted market where you don't have many teams with cap space to go spend in free agency. But also, I think it's the realities of the current collective bargaining agreement as well. Teams are being more careful with the deals that they're putting in there. And you mentioned this. We're also not seeing a lot of incentives added into new deals. So I'm curious to see if this becomes the norm, the way this summer has played out, or if the very restricted amount of cap space that's available is the larger culprit here, and if in future seasons when there is more cap space, if we do see things soften a little bit in terms of player friendlier deals.
Yeah, I think there's pieces and parts of this that are influenced by the CBA, and some are just the world we're living in at the moment.
Yeah.
Part of what we're also seeing is, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, teams are being a little more cautious with long-term money because the cap growth isn't necessarily going to be there like we thought it was. Instead of being 10%, 10%, 10%, and then a gradual decline, it's going to 7% next year. Now, we don't know that's where it will land. And sometimes the NBA in the past has been more conservative early because nobody comes back and is like, hey, we have, 5% more cap space than what we thought later. Like, that's not a thing that happens. You would rather tell teams, hey, plan for only 7, and then tell them, hey, it's actually going to be 10, because that helped, right? Rising tide lifts all boats, and that helps everybody. So you've got that factoring in with the incentives in particular. I think we're just moving out of that world. I talked about it with Desmond Bane and the complications that are causing right now for the Magic. Now, the Magic knew when they traded for him, they planned for that as part of their summer, that, hey, we may run into a spot where we may not be able to fill that last roster spot, and it kind of is what it is. And it'll, when deals start to prorate and everything as the season goes, they'll eventually be able to fill that spot. But for now, we have to kind of let it run. But there's also, we talked about this in depth during last year's lead up to the trade deadline, that like incentives can cause all these weird issues when you're trying to make trades,
right,
as well, because it's, all right, you got to factor this in. It was a weird thing in the Dylan Brooks, Green for Kevin Durant, right? Where
you would look and say both these teams, they can't trade with each other. And yet, because of the incentives, it somehow makes it so they can actually pull this off. And neither team is taking back more money than they're sending out. But that, Keith, that's got to be, I can't imagine that comes up very often, where the incentives are where it's so close that the incentive tips it on both sides to make the deal legal. That was pretty
insane. On both
insane.
sides, for sure. Now, on one side, it
on
definitely
one side,
is.
Sure.
Come up. That was an issue with Cam Johnson all last year at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, we're gonna go snag Cam Johnson for $20 million and say, yeah, he's got like $3.5 million in incentives in his deal, and you might run into hard cap issues and the like. I think the other piece of this too is I think players, their agents, their representatives have done a better job of saying, hey, just give me the money. Like, I don't I don't need to get paid 25 million and then go earn another $1 million on top. Like, if you think I can get to 26, give me 26. Like, why are we fooling around with this? Sometimes there's reasons why you do this because it can actually help you maximize some cap space and the like. The Nets very famously did that with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving when they knew, hey, these guys aren't going to play. Or at least KD, they knew he wasn't going to play. So they put incentives in his deal that were like plays a ridiculously low amount of games. So then when he did play, he earned it and he got the money back. So just something to keep an eye on. It was, as I've been kind of combing through all these new contracts and figuring everything out versus what was reported versus where it actually landed, I was like, hey, actually none of these have had incentives in them yet. So just something I wanted to know.
Okay. And then we've got some interesting contracts that you wanted to get into here. We have some contracts kind of, do a little curve thing where they go down and then come back up. We've seen some of the declining contracts. We talked about that a little bit yesterday with Luke Cornett, but which ones did you want to kind of point out?
Yeah, and if you're wondering about Finney Smith or Cornett, we talked about them yesterday, but Duncan Robinson, good example of everybody kind of was like, oh my gosh, 3 years, 48 million or whatever it was for Duncan Robinson. Yeah, kind of. Maybe. We'll see. Duncan Robinson is starting out at 16.8 million. Shout out to Yossi Goslan, who does really good work on the cap. He'll be one of my people working with me side by side at Sports Business Classroom coming up here at the end of the week and into next week in Las Vegas. He noted Robinson's first year salary was the absolute most he could get using Simone Fontecchio plus the 8.5 million or so you're allowed to plus up in a trade. So that's how they landed at that 16.8 for Duncan Robinson. So just kind of a fun little nerd note. But then look at the next 2 years, 2 million guaranteed and then nothing guaranteed for Robinson. So it's really like a 3-year, $18 million contract, or at, worse, a 1 year, $18 million contract for Robinson. So that's the fun part of, all right, that's what it was reported. Now let's actually get into the numbers and see where this landed out. So Robinson, kind of an interesting one. Jabari Smith Jr. and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, their contracts start high. Go to Alexander Walker's. Yeah. His contract starts high at 15 million. Which took out the whole idea of like, oh, he'll be the non-taxpayer MLE amount. But then look, it drops all the way down to 14.4. And then it starts to climb back up towards the end of his deal. And the reason why it drops out, look, a couple lines above, Trae Young and Kristaps Porzingis, player option and an unrestricted free agent year there for Porzingis. So if you're going to, and Dyson Daniels, first year of his new contract. If he gets an extension or if he resigns, will kick in. So the Hawks have a lot of reason to want as little money on the books in that year as they can. So Alexander takes the little bit of a front. Well, I guess I always hesitate to call these front loaded because they're front loaded and then they come back. But it's I refer to it as an up and down and up contract. So that's kind of where that one landed out. And then Jabari Smith Jr. with the Rockets in his rookie scale extension. And you're going to pull that one up here on Spot Track as well. His rookie scale extension, when it kicks in, will start at 23 and then go down the year after that. And that's when we'll see where Kevin Durant is, but you're going to have Amen Thompson's first new year of his new contract, which sounds crazy because this dude's going into year 3.
Right.
But this is how you have to manage your roster. You can't plan for it just today. You really have to think years out. We'll see where Durant lands out, as well as Fred VanVleet could be a free agent that summer. So again, reason why you would not want a lot of money on the books. And we talked about Finney Smith. His contract becomes non-guaranteed that year. So it's a lot of flexibility for the Rockets. It's just really smart roster management to build it in this way, because that puts you in a position where you can maximize everything moving forward when you need to.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way teams have to be now. They've got to be very careful with every single dollar. They have to plan things out. Otherwise, they can find themselves in a situation where suddenly they have to do something in order to free up space or whatever. And you never want to be in a position where you have to make some kind of, especially a trade, because teams will use that against you if you find yourself in a spot where you're stuck and you have to get some kind of help. So,
well, we didn't put it on the show sheet, but it's kind of related.
Yeah.
Speaking of being stuck and having to do something, the Bucks, they officially started their summer process. So I put a tweet up that kind of laid out their order of operations for this. I won't turn this into math class here, but essentially the Bucks did waive and stretch Damian Lillard. We all knew that was coming.
Mm-hmm.
The one that was a little surprising was Vasily Micic. He gave up $6.1 million in his buyout with the Bucks, so only took $2 million. That also got waived and stretched over 3 years, and that got them right to that 15% allowable number of stretched money on the cap.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they did it. Then they proceeded to take all of their cap space and they gave all of it to Miles Turner. So his contract came in a little higher than what was reported. My guess is how that was negotiated was the Bucks said, we'll either give you this, or if we can create more cap space, we'll give you a little bit more. And they were able to ultimately create that little bit more in cap space.
Yep, exactly. So that's the way that all broke down there with Miles Turner. So he does get, it's not a ton, but he gets a little bit more on his deal with the Bucks.
I'd take it.
Oh yeah, for sure. If we want to just pretend like he didn't get it, they want to kick it our way. Yeah, no problem.
If anybody wants to direct deposit, my account number is. Oh wait,
no, we'll just Venmo.
We can just Venmo me or drop it in cash in a bag outside Thomas and Mack, and I'll pick it up there.
Yes, that sounds like a safe thing to do.
Yeah, that would be good.
All right, let's go here. Karis LeVert, Dennis Schroeder, the Pistons, and the Kings. Oh boy, Keith, why are you laughing already about this?
Well, this one got a little weird. It got very kind of sideways because there was Dennis Schroeder's going to the Kings. No, he's not. Dennis Schroeder is going to the Kings. Hold on, maybe it's going to be a sign and trade from Malik Monk. Actually, that's not happening. Maybe he's not even going to the Kings. And then in the end, Dennis Schroeder did sign with the Kings via a sign and trade, but it did not involve any players going back. The Pistons created a $14.1 million trade exception,
which is
by
something.
sending Dennis. Yeah, that is something. And we're going to get to something it wasn't, much to the dismay, I think, of some Pistons fans.
Sure.
But anyway, Dennis Schroeder goes to the Kings. It looks like they used one of their trade exceptions. So they're sitting now close to the first apron, but it looks like they did preserve some of their MLE with that. So we'll see, how that all breaks down. But when we go to the Pistons side of this, what Pistons fans were hoping for was Schroeder would leave behind that $14.1 million trade exception, and then Karis LeVert would be signed and traded into it from the Hawks. That did not happen. He just signed straight for the non-taxpayer MLE. My guess is what the sticking point there was, I don't think he wanted to do a 3-year deal, and a sign and trade has to be a 3-year deal.
Right.
And if you're LeVert, it was probably, I don't want to, like we talked about with Duncan Robinson, I don't want to attach these non-guaranteed years to the end and give the team all the control. And the Pistons are probably like, we really don't want you to have a player option and give the control to you, nor do we just want a guaranteed 3rd year. So they just signed him by using the non-taxpayer MLE. They'll stay as an over-the-cap team. Why that was important was there was potential where they could have maybe finagled things and become a cap space team or not. But for now, looks like they just did it the most simple way possible, and that's how it's going to move forward with the Pistons and the Kings both.
Which is fine. I mean, even if they were a cap space team, it's not like there'd be a lot.
That's it.
That they would have generated. I guess you'd have the room exception in that case, but still. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it all just works out. And Karis LeVert goes to the Pistons, and Dennis Schroeder winds up going to the Sacramento Kings. And there you go. And we were hearing about Schroeder to the Kings before free agency even started, like days before it even started. So I always felt like it was going to get there. It just seemed like they were manipulating some things behind the scenes, trying to see, does it make sense to rope this into a bigger deal and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I don't mind that acquisition for the Kings. That roster is just kind of weird.
It is.
There's like a lot of dudes who need the ball on that team, and like the one guy who kind of plays without the ball is Keegan Murray, who like stands in the corner, is like, all right, guys,
don't forget about me. I'm over here.
Throw it over here. Get me a shot, please. Like, yeah, a little weird construction there, but it kind of is what it is.
All right. Let's jump over here to Jackson Hayes and the Lakers. Now, Keith, I actually made a mistake on this. Now, this is maybe a Lakers mistake with Jackson Hayes, but I made a mistake in that I forgot about the NBA subsidizing the veteran minimums. So I've been talking about Jackson Hayes and about the difference between what he wound up getting, the 120% bump that he got, versus just a normal veteran minimum, and say, well, it's really only like 600,000. It's actually a bit more than that because of the NBA subsidy that could, well, this isn't the straw that broke the camel's back and created a situation where the Lakers don't have the biannual. They certainly would have been closer had they negotiated this Jackson Hayes deal a bit differently.
Yeah, so a couple things with the Lakers roster as it is right now, and I understand you've got Jordan Goodwin on an extremely light guarantee. He's probably not going anywhere. Actually, no. I'm going to say he's not going anywhere. They like him. They're happy to have him. And then you have Shake Milton on a non-guaranteed. That seems more likely to be a spot where the Lakers could move in a different direction. But it's been asked quite a bit of, like, do the Lakers have enough room for the biannual? Can they sign somebody else with the biannual? They don't. So it's not that they don't have the biannual. They do, but they are, there it is, $908K under that first apron. And that first apron is their hard cap for them. And the reason why that's a hard cap is they use the non-taxpayer Emily and they split it between DeAndre and Jake LaRavia.
Correct.
So that triggers your first apron hard cap. Now, here, where does the Jackson Hayes of it all matter? Well, what the Lakers did with Jackson Hayes was they signed him. They had early bird rights on Jackson Hayes, but they signed him using the non-bird portion of that. You don't have to use the full bird right amount. Yeah. And if they had done early bird rights, that has to be a minimum of a 2-year deal. And I don't think they wanted a second year there. And I don't think, we just kind of talked about it, right? I don't think Hayes wanted to be like, all right, fine, I'll give you all the control with non-guarantee or a team option or whatever. So they agreed, all right, we're going to give you a bump using the non-bird, which takes them to 3.4, almost 3.5 million. So that 3.4 million for Jackson Hayes, here's where it gets a little tricky. That could have been 2.2 million because like you were mentioning before, the NBA, when you sign a veteran minimum contract, if it's a true vet minimum deal, you get paid whatever your years of service dictates. So for Jackson Hayes, it's probably $3+ million. But the number that hits your cap sheet and your tax and apron calculation is 2.2 million, or almost 2.3 million. So that's like 1.1 million or so, 1.2 million that the Lakers could have had to work with.
Right.
And if they had that to work with, so now we start doing math. If you had that extra 1.2 million and you wipe out Shake Milton, now you're at just under the biannual exception amount of 5 million. Not a huge deal by any means. The Lakers can still get there to use a pretty large chunk of the biannual if they wanted to. You probably won't at this point, only because the idea there is you're just going to sign a vet minimum, because if you can only offer 3-something million of the biannual to just Bradley Beal, right? Because I know that's one of the rumored destinations.
Sure.
Well, you're just going to give him the vet minimum because he's actually going to make more money that way off of that, because he can't actually take less than his own minimum amount. So it just gets very messy. So you would just give him the vet minimum. But if you needed to, you could have got there. I mean, you really could have got there if it was like, hey, Milton and Goodwin both have to go. You could get there. But it's just, this is, I don't want to make this more than what it is. It's just another one of those like little, like, why? Kind of like, what, why? And I know you have a theory on why.
Well, so I was right in terms of the difference for Jackson Hayes is about 600,000. The difference for the Lakers and their books, though, was closer to 1.2 million, which certainly matters. Now, this is what Rob Pelinka has become known for, right? Is doing little things like this where you could say, well, if you had just done this instead, it would have been executed a lot differently. Giving players 2-year deals, guys who are second round picks, giving them 2-year deals instead of preserving some of your exception and giving them a 3-year deal or 4-year deal. You don't have to do that anymore, by the way.
Sure.
Which
we dubbed the Pelinka rule.
The Pelinka rule, right? Now you don't have to save any of your exception, but it was things like that. They had to pay Taylor Horton-Tucker a year or two early. They had to pay Austin Reeves a year or two early. They had to pay Max Christie a year or two earlier than most other teams would have. Most other teams would say, you're a second round pick. You don't have any negotiating power, or an undrafted guy. You don't have negotiating power. We're going to give you a 3-year deal. We're going to give you a 4-year deal. We want the extra team control. The Lakers have done stuff like that quite a bit, given up player options in situations where you go, would another team have really given a player option on this? Sure. Probably not. It's the little things, but the little things certainly add up. Now, what I think happened here is a couple of things. I think, number one, the Lakers, they know they want a good relationship with the agent, because Jackson Hayes' agent is also Luka Doncic's agent, and they want Luka to sign an extension in August when he's eligible to do so. He's also DeAndre Ayton's agent. So connecting all the dots here, I have a feeling the Lakers weren't going to fight too hard on Jackson Hayes' contract, knowing that they also had to get a deal done for DeAndre Ayton, and they need Luka to sign that extension. That certainly matters. I also think when you look at the center market, look at this. It is an old West town with the tumbleweeds rolling through when you look at the actual centers that are out there on the market. So if you're Jackson Hayes and the Lakers say, well, you know what, we want to give you $600,000 less than what we could. We'll give you a true veteran minimum, and that's going to get us $1.2 million closer to a biannual exception. If you're Jackson Hayes, you just go, well, who else are you signing? Al Horford is rumored to be going to Golden State or maybe Denver. There's no one else out there. And so I think it's that bit of leverage that Hayes had as well. All of it combined to create a situation where the Lakers just said, fine, we'll make sure you get the extra $600,000, and here you go, and we'll deal with the ramifications. And if we have to try to create space, we'll have to do something else in order to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's and again, let's not make this bigger than what it is. No. Probably doesn't really matter in the long run, but it's just those little misses. For what it's worth, too, I don't think giving Ayton the player option on the second year is any kind of mistake for the Lakers. Like that, we're more talking like, you signed a guy to a minimum. In the second year, you made a player option. Like, why? Like, what? Like, you're already a minimum guy. What's the point? And that kind of costs them a couple times potentially. With then a guy gets a no trade clause, and other things get super messy. But with Ayton, it's fine. Like you already got him on a value deal. Like, and I'm not the biggest DeAndre Ayton guy in the world, but either. Like $8 million is that's a bargain for what he'll give you, even if it's like, all right, this guy's only playable for 20 minutes a night. All right, they're going to be 20 pretty solid minutes. Like, it doesn't matter for $8 million. So I don't mind giving him the player option. One other thing while we have the Lakers cap sheet up, because this question comes up. So if we go down to the bottom there with a Dutiro, why does it show 0 in year one?
They're not paying him.
That's it. Yeah, he's playing for free. He felt so bad about the extra that went to Jake Jackson Hayes that he's like, I'll play for free.
That's right.
What it good really guy. is good guy.
So generous.
No wonder why he was drafted. The Lakers were like, hey, we had to pay a lot of money to trade up to get you. To give us back.
We're taking it out of your salary, man. You're paying us back. Yeah, we're only worth $10 billion, and we're gonna take back the few million that we paid up.
That check hasn't quite it's things are liquid. I don't really have that in my account. It's net worth, all these things. But anyway, the real reason is guys who signed under their second round pick exception, they don't their cap hit doesn't go on the books until July 31st. So the reason why was, if you're a team with cap space like Brooklyn or Milwaukee or Memphis this summer, what they didn't want was those teams saying, well, I can't have them hit the books yet because it'll mess up my cap space plan. So let's hold them out. And then the player says, well, I'm not playing in Summer League if you don't sign me. So what they did was the workaround that they built into the CBA when they created the second round pick exception. That first year doesn't actually charge to the cap until there. Now, for the Lakers' purposes, it does count against the apron, which is all that really matters in this case. But just in case people are like, did you guys make a typo? Is that a mistake? He's really zero? Like, what's going on? That will flip on July 31st. That'll flip over to his actual minimum amount, which is like 1.2 million.
By the way, I'm glad you brought up Adou Thiero because that's another, the little things here and there. You look at Rasheer Fleming, who was the 31st pick, got a 4-year deal with team control at the end. Adou Thiero, 3-year deal with team control at the end. He was the 36th pick. Now, I would rather, and you could say, well, there's more money committed to Fleming, but that's true. But on these types of contracts, you would rather have another year of very cheap team control than have the guy hit free agency in 3 years. It's the little thing. Like 3 years from now, we could be talking about how this summer the Lakers only gave Thiero a 3-year deal when they could have done a 4, and now it's messing up their cap because they got to pay him a year early.
I don't want to make you feel now. I feel like I'm like picking at you here, and you're my buddy, and we're having a good show. But do you know the only other guy so far that only got a 3-year second round pick exception deal this draft class?
This draft class? No, I don't.
Maxime Reynaud from the Sacramento Kings. So when you're sharing space with the Kings, not always the best place to be.
Oh my God.
So yeah, and maybe it was, and there can be a lot of negotiating that goes
Kings
into
fans.
it. Sorry, Kings fans, but like I'm sure Lakers fans are like, wait, what? We're doing Kings things now? Why? There could be a lot that goes into it, right? Because there can be, hey, all right, I'll do 4 years, but I need a partial guarantee on year 3 or whatever. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this could get a little messy again if he happens to pop within the next couple of seasons.
Well, and here's the other, I talked about this on the Lakers Nation podcast last night, but there's this, you look at the market right now. We talked about it earlier on the show. We looked at the incentives not being in the new deals. You look at how much non-guaranteed money is being put in the end of these deals. The Lakers still tend to give fairly player-friendly deals. Now, again, Ayton was a fine value and everything, but more often than not, the Lakers tend to be the team to kick in that player option, tend to be the team to give a little bit more than you would expect for a player. And that kind of stuff, it does add up. It does matter. And it just kind of goes into this whole big mess where you look at it and say, yeah, they're just little things here and there that wind up adding up to being quite a bit. I mean, hell, look at Jake LaRavia even, right? Similar station in NBA standing with Day'Ron Sharpe, got the same contract, but Day'Ron's deal with the Nets has a team option on the second year. Jake LaRavia's does not. It's a flat deal. I don't think either one are bad deals, by the way. I think they're both fine deals, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have signed it. I think they're both very good deals, but it's interesting that the same deal, and on the Nets side, they wound up negotiating in a team option, and on the Lakers side, they did not.
And here, we can close with this. If it comes out at some point down the line when the Lakers are the next finals Lakers team, they landed player X, and part of it was because of their reputation for taking care of guys, then it worked.
Then it's all good.
Like, then it's all good, and it all matters. If it turns out, man, we could have had this guy, but we're into a little bit of issue because of what we were paying so-and-so, or this guy, we couldn't get off his contract and those things. And that's when you run into, all right, boy, especially when teams know they kind of got you. It's like, hey, yeah, that should only be 1 second, but you're giving us another one because we know you have to.
Right.
Get off that deal.
You're throwing in David Putney before you realize it.
That's it, man. Just because you feel like it. But it's the little stuff around the margins. And now we've bored everybody to tears at this point. I'm sure.
Let's move on.
Harping on this, so we'll move on.
Let's go to Bradley Beal. So Bradley Beal still looks like a buyout is coming. I still think, Keith, I don't think there's any way the Clippers trading Norman Powell is coincidental.
Yeah,
I think he winds up with the Clippers. I think he makes a lot of sense there.
There a report too. He was in LA, him and his wife hanging out with James Harden and his, I don't know if it's wife, girlfriend, significant other, something. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to assume.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
People.
I don't want to know. Honestly, I don't want to know.
Yeah, but I think you're right. on that one.
So he probably does wind up there, but it does look like they are going to progress towards a buyout, and that's the way this is going to go. And the Suns are then going to have dead money on the books. Now, there's a number of other teams that will be interested in Beal. The Lakers being a team, the Warriors being a team, the Bucks being another team that'll be interested. But it does seem like I don't think it's coincidental that that move happened. Just like it wasn't coincidental that the Lakers needed a center and DeAndre Ayton somehow gets bought out when the Lakers needed a center, and the Lakers just, kind of suddenly pulled back from the Brook Lopez pursuit and all that kind of happening.
Yeah.
Not coincidental. Don't think it's coincidental that the Clippers happened to trade away their main source of minutes at the shooting guard spot in Powell, and now Bradley Beal is going to be hitting the free agent market.
And just what do the Clippers have to offer? They have a little bit of the non-taxpayer MLE left that they can throw at Bradley Beal and still fit in that, plus other stuff. So they'll make it all work. And that's at this point too, just gonna come up with Damian Lillard. When we're talking about $20 million in stretched money, like it's easy to pitch these guys on. Hey, you're already getting 20 million somewhere else. You cool with 5 from us?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's go. Like that's 5 extra million. And I'll talk about this too very briefly here. This is turning into a very cap heavy show, which has been fun, but people always ask like, well, doesn't that then come off the other team's books? There's a process in the NBA called set off. Why it's not called offset, I don't know.
I still call it offset because it makes more sense.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's just, they call it set off. So I try to use the CBA term when and where I can, even as dumb as it may be. But anyway, it's what that means is a portion. So basically what they do is they take Bradley Beal gets $5 million. They take that $5 million and then they take the minimum contract he could have signed for. They then take half of that and apply it back to the Suns. And that's how the Suns get that. So you're talking a very small amount of money. Generally,
get back.
And here's the key part. It doesn't get applied until the season is over. So it gets applied when the regular season ends. Now, it can impact future years. That number could come down a little bit. But again, we're talking about an extremely small amount of money. So people get, I think, caught up in, well, that all comes off the other the books when they sign somewhere else. It really doesn't. It's a very minor amount of money.
And now Bradley Beal will still get paid by the Suns. Yeah. Whatever, like his payments aren't actually going to get stretched over 5 years.
His payments do, yes. Yeah, they actually get stretched out too.
Okay. So his money will get stretched. Yep. So in that way, that's actually a negative for the players too, because you'd rather have the money now than get it 5 years from now, unless you're Bobby Bonilla.
That's it, right? Yeah, and then you're 70 years old and you're still getting your $1 million on July 1st. So yeah, yep.
All right, let's jump over to Jonas Valanciunas. Keith, I'm sure you saw the comments that the Valanciunas had.
Yeah, that's where we're going.
Some of it could be kind of lost in translation a little bit. Sure. Like when you read the comments, it's a little bit wonky, but overall, they don't exactly read like somebody who is super excited about being a Denver Nugget.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is a I think if all things were equal and he had control, Valanciunas would probably be playing for Panathinaikos. It would say, I'm going there. The end of the story. That's where I'm going. I think where we're more likely to see this land out is the Nugget, and you're pulling a quote up.
Yep,
the Nuggets are like, no, you're not. You're playing for us. That's how it's going to be. So, I can read it. He says, you can say anything. A lot has already been said, all kinds of thoughts. The bubble burst. Everyone shared what everyone thinks. We'll only find out when the first game is played. Everything will be clear. When the trade is finalized, we'll come up with a plan. They, meaning the Nuggets, will express their wishes, how they think, how they see it, medical, other details that will depend on the team. So, no, I'm psyched to go to Denver. Like, let's go Nuggets. Like, you didn't get that. But you also didn't get, like, I'm not leaving Lithuania and they come find me here if they want. right? You just kind of get, all right, we'll figure it out when the trade goes through.
And remember, he has to get a FIBA letter of clearance if he wants to go play in Greece, and he's not getting that if he's under contract with the Denver Nuggets. So, we'll see where all of this goes. I I still think this is probably why the Al Horford situation isn't resolved yet. The Denver Nuggets could offer him the MLE if Jonas were to say, I'm going to give back all of my money and we're going to make this, I'm going to go over to Greece or something. But again, Denver can also say, if Horford winds up, I mean, who knows? Probably right when we stop recording, we're going to get news that Horford has agreed with the Warriors. And then Denver can just look in the market and say, there's nobody to replace you with, dude. You're under contract with us, so you're playing for us. And that's it. And that could be ultimately where this goes. What if something crazy like Valanciunas just says, well, then I retire? What happens then?
Then the Nuggets, well, basically he'll retire. The money sits on Denver's books because it doesn't immediately come off unless he completely forfeits it. But at that point, if he goes to sign anywhere else, Denver could block it and say, well, hold on, he never fulfilled his contract here.
Right.
And that's how you get around. Guys can't just be like, I retire and now I play over here.
I retire and I'm unretired. There you
right?
go. Right.
So yeah, it would get very ugly if we got into that type of situation. My guess is this either my primary thought is Jonas Valanciunas plays for the Nuggets next year, and probably with some kind of side agreement of, hey, give us this year. We'll see how it goes. If you still want to get out of here, we'll waive you next offseason because his contract is non-guaranteed. That could never be anything that's like fully agreed to in writing. My guess is that's most likely where this lands, and they'll try to win him over and maybe winning a title and playing, on a really good team will make him happy enough to be there. The other option is if he's really going to be that unhappy. Again, we talked about this. Valanciunas he's never caused trouble before. He's never been a guy who's made himself a problem. But if that's going to be where it goes, then Denver will probably say, fine, you saw what Micic did, gave back almost his entire contract. You saw what Vezenkov did a year ago, gave back his entire contract, give us it all, give all of it back, and then we can have a conversation. So that's my guess is, that's option 2 and, a pretty wide gap between that and option 1.
All right, let's jump over here. Last thing, DeAnthony Melton sounding very likely now to wind up back with the Golden State Warriors. Yeah. Now, what do they have to offer if they're going after DeAnthony Melton? And by the way, Melton is a very, very talented player. He's very high on my list of free agents that are out there. Has dealt with unfortunate injuries over the last couple of years, but a really talented player that I think would be a great get.
Really good combo guard to have off the bench because he can play just enough point guard to get you by, can really play off ball as well. Was a good defender the last time we saw him play. It's going to have been a year coming off the torn ACL.
Yeah.
But drawing a ton of interest. Now, what can the Warriors offer him? I don't know. I'm the shrug emoji guy because we don't really know, because a lot of it is still tied into what's going to happen with Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah.
If Jonathan Kuminga gets $25 million, well, now they're already at the first apron, and that probably limits them to the taxpayer MLE. If Jonathan Kuminga is gone in a sign and trade and the Warriors bring back a $15 million player in that sign and trade, then they can probably get to a point where they can offer the the non-taxpayer MLE. I think that's the same thing that's kind of got Al Horford on hold a little bit, as well as like, all right, sure, you want me. Maybe he's like, I want to play there, but what's the deal? And that's what we don't know. That's where this restricted free agent process is getting a little stuck. My guess is what the Warriors want to do is, this is all like, I want to say they line it up, but it's really like this is happening while this is happening, and you got to kind of mesh them all together.
Right.
Is they want to be in a spot where it becomes we figure out Kuminga with knowing if Kuminga is going away, knowing we have Horford in the fold or Melton in the fold, and we have that locked up. If we're moving off Jonathan Kuminga, if we don't have that locked up, well, we don't really want to lose Jonathan Kuminga. As down as they seem to be on him. And there's been a lot of reporting that is a divide between multiple members of the organization. Some still believe very heavily or very highly in Jonathan Kuminga, while others don't believe in him very much at all. So it just becomes the situation where they've got to kind of figure that out in conjunction, because it's going to get tough. And yeah, if the Nuggets all of a sudden become, hey, we're a viable option for a backup big man, I'm sure Al Horford's like, well, that's an hour or so closer to the East Coast where my family may stay, so maybe I go there. One thing on the Horford situation too, Brad Stevens met with the media today for the first time.
Yep.
He came out and basically said, yeah, we're very unlikely to re-sign Al Horford. I know Celtics fans have been banking on, well, they're going to move Simons, they're going to move Niang. Those trades are official now. They are members of the Celtics. They can't be aggregated with any outgoing salary for 2 months. There's a 2-month restriction on that. That's not a huge deal. You'd still get that done before training camp opens. But your challenge, if you're Boston, is like homes are quickly drying up for some guys. And it's like, where are we going to go with this? So that becomes all right, well, what are we doing here? Where are we going to go? They're still going to make another move, but it would not shock me at this point if the Celtics go into the season above the second apron and take care of it by the trade deadline. They won't finish above the second apron because they're like 300K,
there's no reason
which
to.
is comically close. But yeah, it's but that was just a little piece of news there for people. Yeah, 332K.
They'll find a way.
They will definitely be under the second apron before trade deadline goes past. But for anybody who was holding out hope, and Steven said, yeah, we made offers to both Horford and Cornette, but without saying directly, but they weren't
good offers.
Good offers. Like he basically said, it is what it is, right? We're kind of in a spot where we knew we were probably going to lose them, and here we are now, living that out.
Right. All right. Well, obviously a lot, it's like a relatively quiet day around the NBA, but there's still kind of a lot going on that we had to cover. So
it's all the fallout now, right? Of like, oh, how did that actually go down? What happened? We heard the number, but where did it go? Which to me is, don't get me wrong, I love the tweets from Shams and I get all excited and fired up too. I don't like the ones though that when then it's like 5 minutes later and it's another one. And it's here's my article about the other thing I already tweeted.
Well, this time of year, because we're jumping at every notification, so it's like something. Oh no, it's just
also,
the same
why
one.
Can't Twitter have its own like notification sound like it used to have back in the day on the iPhone? Because now it might, like, I got a free coffee notification from Dunkin' Donuts, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong, I'm all about that, but like, it sounds exactly like a Twitter notification, and I'm like, wait, don't get me excited.
Do you generally have the sound on your phone just
Always,
day to day?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm like,
I'm a no sound. I just leave it on the the vibrate mode or whatever.
Yeah. I have it's stupid, but I mostly have it on because of like tweets and stuff. Like I want to make sure I hear it. When it goes off. So
see, I get so many tweet notifications. Like I just drive everybody around me nuts. If
I only have them on for a few people. Like it's like I went through and turned a lot of them off a couple years ago because I was like, I really only need to know from a handful of people. So, but yeah, if you're getting a lot of them, that would drive that. Yeah, I'd be like, dude, shut that thing off. Like what are you doing? So,
I definitely get a lot of them. Okay. Everybody, thank you for joining the show. We appreciate all of you. Please make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.